For 34 years, this robe has been mine. Enough years to understand that true justice isn't merely written in statutes or captured on security tape or listed on a docket sheet. It lives in the choices people make, especially in those 4 seconds when they think no one is keeping score. Then came a September Tuesday, bright and unremarkable, until a file landed on my desk that seemed at first glance like nothing more than a fender bender. The clerk placed it in front of me. Serena Wolf, age 24, charged with reckless driving, leaving the scene and resisting an officer. I saw her name, then I saw her father's name, and I knew the air changed the instant she entered. Some defendants walk in terrified. Some walk in already defeated. Some walk in performing a remorse they've memorized with their lawyers. Serena Wolf walked in like someone who had already spoken to a person she believed outranked everyone in the room. She was 17 minutes overdue, not a single hurried step. That pale blue cashmere sweater had been chosen with care, respectful enough to pass, composed enough to announce she had dressed for something brief. Her dark hair hung loose. Her heels struck the floor at a steady, unhurried rhythm. She moved with the effortless polish of someone who had attended enough formal events to know exactly how to perform composure. She brought no apology in her body because she carried no belief that one would ever be asked of her. What she truly carried into my courtroom was neither cashmere nor poise. It was her father's name. She wore it like certain people wear a badge, not flaunted, just there, doing its invisible work before she uttered a single syllable. I let her reach her table. Mrs. Wolf, your appearance time was 9:05. It is now 9:17. Does the court deserve an explanation for being kept waiting? She glanced up with the gentle patience of someone stating the obvious. Parking was difficult. No apology, Your Honor. Just a perfectly measured inadequacy. The kind of answer you give to someone you've already decided doesn't warrant anything more. Her lawyer jumped up at once. Your Honor, we offer our sincere apology. I acknowledged him with a nod. Then my attention returned to Serena. Mrs. Wolf, this is a courtroom. When it convenes at 9 o'clock, you are here at 9 o'clock. Understood? She met my eyes a beat too long, then understood. Her father was Chief Raymond Wolf, 16 years running the city's police force, the longest tenure any chief had ever served. His portrait hangs in every precinct lobby across this city. His name carries a particular frequency here, one that makes institutional machinery bend before anyone even decides to bend it. Serena had been raised inside that frequency. That morning, she arrived wrapped in it. She came with 2 lawyers, Philip Crane, lead counsel from a firm known for representing the police union and the city's pension board, plus a second private attorney whose separate presence signaled that Serena understood at some level that this morning might demand answers she would have to give without her father's shield. In the 4th row of the gallery sat Edward Pike and his wife, Lucia. They had driven from Millbrook, where for 31 years they've run their small grocery store. Edward wore a button-down shirt and a light jacket, the uniform of a man who had closed his business to be here. Lucia clutched an unopened notepad on her knee. 2 rows behind them, in street clothes, sat Officer Dana Reyes. She wasn't scheduled to testify. She was present the way people show up when something they did right is about to be challenged, and they need to see if it holds up. Before I could even call the hearing to order, Philip Crane rose. He called the incident a misunderstanding. He challenged the idea that the door contact amounted to resisting. He mentioned that Chief Wolf had submitted a character letter on his daughter's behalf and was available by phone if the court found that helpful. He delivered that last line with the deliberate casualness of someone who knows a name has always been enough. I didn't bite. I called Sandra Cho to present. Sandra Cho played the parking lot security footage without introduction. She simply let it run and let it speak. The Mercedes pulling into the Millbrook Community Market lot. Speed clocked at 41 miles per hour in a 15-mile-per-hour zone. The impact, the delivery truck's rear corner. The Mercedes side mirror snapping off, the truck's chassis jerking visibly, then the 4 seconds at the exit, the store owner's face unmistakable in the frame, Edward Pike standing in his own lot, just back from a delivery, staring directly at the car that had just hit his truck. Those 4 seconds, then the car drove away. I turned to Serena. I asked if she disputed that her car had hit the delivery truck. She answered with the calm clarity of someone explaining something that should already be obvious. There might have been contact. Nothing serious. The truck was blocking her way and she was running late. Her insurance covers minor parking lot incidents. I said, Mrs. Wolf, the footage shows you making eye contact with the truck's owner at the exit. You saw him. You drove off. Tell me what you believed you were doing in that moment. One shoulder went up, a half shrug, controlled enough to be polite, dismissive enough for everyone in the room to feel it. I was late. I figured insurance would take care of it. Insurance requires you to stay at the scene and give your information. I'm certain my father's office can arrange the information exchange. The room froze. That particular stillness that happens when someone has just stated, plainly and without shame, that different rules apply to them. I looked at her for a moment. Then I said, Mrs. Wolf, your father's office is not a way to handle civil traffic matters in my courtroom. What your father's office is the reason this court is about to call him directly on the record. Philip Crane shot to his feet before I finished. A swift, professional objection. The chief's availability had been offered as a courtesy, not as an invitation for an unplanned examination in open court. I asked my clerk to read the phone number Philip Crane himself had submitted in his pretrial filing under character reference available for court contact. She read it aloud. I thanked her. Serena's posture shifted. Not dramatically. She was far too practiced for drama, but noticeably. The way someone shifts when they expected a name to be a ceiling and just learned it's about to be taken apart. The call went out on speaker, right there in open court. Chief Raymond Wolf picked up on the third ring. His voice was exactly what 16 years as the city's top law enforcement officer produces. Measured, commanding. The tone of a man used to receiving calls that matter. He greeted the court. Said he was happy to help, said his daughter was a good person who had made a poor decision, and he was confident the court would consider her background and his family's dedication to this city. I said, Chief Wolf, thank you for taking this call. I need to ask you something directly. The officer who responded to the complaint against your daughter is Officer Dana Reyes, a patrol officer in your department. Have you spoken with Officer Reyes, her supervisors, or anyone in your chain of command about this matter since the citation was issued? A pause. Chief Wolf said he might have mentioned to her supervisor that he was aware of the situation and keeping an eye on it. I said, Chief Wolf, I want the record to show exactly what you just told this court. You contacted the supervisory chain of the officer who cited your daughter in a case where your daughter is the defendant to say you were aware and monitoring it. Do you understand what that communication means in the context of these proceedings? A longer pause. I understand how it could be seen. I'm not asking how it could be seen, Chief Wolf. I'm asking you to tell this court what you intended it to mean. The silence that followed was the silence of a man who had just been asked on a speakerphone in a public courtroom to put into words something he understood perfectly well at the time and understands perfectly well now, and had desperately hoped would never have to be spoken aloud. He said, I wanted to make sure it was being handled properly. I said, Chief Wolf, it was being handled properly. Officer Reyes filed a complete report. She documented the door contact and the verbal exchange. She attached the security footage. It was being handled properly before you ever called her supervisor. What your call communicated, whether you meant it or not, was that a senior official was watching over a case involving his own family. This court will deal with that. I ended the call. Serena stared at the bench. Her careful posture had vanished. She just sat there, the way someone sits when the foundation they assumed was unshakable has just moved under them in a single conversation. Then Sandra asked to present one more piece of evidence. The apartment building's security camera recording. The audio came from a camera mounted above the door, clean and unmistakable. Do you know who my father is? You won't have a job tomorrow. Serena's voice, crystal clear. The courtroom absorbed it. Serena said she had been upset, said she hadn't meant it literally. I said, Mrs. Wolf, Officer Reyes filed her report anyway. She submitted the parking lot footage anyway. She documented the door contact and your statement anyway. She did all of that even after you told her she would lose her job. This court wants Officer Reyes to know that this proceeding has taken note of what she did and how she did it. Sandra then raised one remaining issue. In the 2 weeks between the citation and this hearing, Edward Pike's delivery truck had sat unusable. His insurance company needed the at-fault driver's information to process a claim. Serena had not contacted Edward, had not contacted his insurance, had not provided her information through any channel in those 14 days. The documented lost delivery income was $1,140. I looked at Edward Pike in the gallery and asked if he wanted to speak. Edward stood. He is not a man who performs emotion. And he didn't start now. He stood with the steadiness of someone who has handled hard things for decades and learned that hard things don't need an audience. He said he had owned the Millbrook Community Market for 31 years. He had paid his taxes, his employees, and his vendors every single week for 31 years without fail. He wasn't asking for anything beyond what the law already gives. Then he looked directly at Serena. I just needed her to stay, that's all. 30 seconds. She looked at me, and she left anyway. I want her to know that I saw her and she saw me and she left anyway. The room held that sentence the way a room holds something said with absolute precision that needs nothing added. I turned to Serena. Ms. Wolf, you walked into this room this morning with a specific assumption that your father's position would make this room behave differently. Your lawyer mentioned his availability. This court found it useful to take advantage of that. What this court learned from that call has been referred to the Department's Office of Professional Standards for a formal review. Your assumption did not protect you here. It became part of the official record. I want you to think carefully about what you assumed this morning and why you assumed it, and whether you want to carry that assumption into every room you enter for the rest of your life. Here was the ruling. On reckless driving, an $800 fine, full court costs, and a mandatory defensive driving course within 60 days. On leaving the scene, a $200 fine plus full restitution to Edward Pike, $200 for documented truck repairs, and $1,840 for documented lost delivery revenue, totaling $6,040, payable within 30 days directly to Edward Pike. On resisting, 60 days suspended, 18 months of formal probation, and mandatory completion of a law enforcement community relations program. Her driver's license suspended for 90 days, effective immediately, and then the extra measure I had been considering since that footage played, since those 4 seconds at the exit, since that face in the frame. 30 hours of community service at the Millbrook Community Market, not a donation, not a check. 30 hours of being physically present at that store, stocking shelves, helping customers, learning from the inside what 31 years of a neighborhood business demands from the people who run it daily. Serena said, "You can't make me do that," I said. "I can, and I have." Philip Crane was on his feet instantly with detailed objections. I noted each one for the record. I changed nothing in the ruling. The department's Office of Professional Standards opened a formal review within 48 hours of the court's referral. 2 members of Officer Reyes' supervisory chain had received direct communications from Chief Wolf after the citation. Both admitted knowing the chief was interested in the matter. Both received formal counseling. Chief Raymond Wolf received a formal letter of reprimand, the first in his 16 years of service, placed in his personnel file. He did not fight it. Officer Dana Reyes was not disciplined. She received a formal commendation for the thoroughness of her incident report and the quality of her supporting documentation. She returned to her patrol duties. Serena completed the defensive driving course within the 60-day window. She paid the full restitution to Edward Pike within 30 days, a check from her personal account, accompanied by a handwritten note on plain paper. I should have stopped. Edward Pike did not frame the check. He framed the note. He placed it behind the counter at the Millbrook Community Market in the same row as his family photographs. Serena completed all 30 hours of community service at the Millbrook Market. She showed up on time for every shift. She spoke little during the first 2 weeks. In the 3rd week, she helped Lucia Pike reorganize the back storage room and stayed 45 minutes past her required time to finish the job the right way. When Lucia thanked her, Serena said, "I'm sorry I didn't stop." Lucia said, "I know." 6 months after sentencing, I read a notice in the municipal court's professional newsletter. The city's police department had adopted a new protocol requiring mandatory ethics training for any officer or senior official whose immediate family member receives a citation from a department employee. The protocol was credited to findings from an OPS review. That review had been opened on a referral from this court. I keep that notice in the same drawer where I keep the things that remind me why I put on this robe every morning. What I think about most when I think about this case is not the ruling or the referral or the new protocol. It is the parking lot footage, those 4 seconds at the exit, the face in the frame, Edward Pike standing in his own lot looking at her looking at him, 30 seconds. That was all he needed. That is the entire story. Let me say something directly to everyone listening. This story is not about a police chief or his daughter or a parking lot accident. It is about something that happens every day in cities everywhere. A name that makes systems bend before anyone even consciously chooses to bend them. The bending doesn't require a phone call. It doesn't require a threat. It happens in the ambient pressure of a name that has worked in enough rooms for long enough that the rooms start anticipating it. Dana Reyes filed her complete report anyway. Edward Pike memorized the first 4 digits of a license plate and called from his landline anyway. They both understood that what happened next would depend entirely on whether the room they reached would truly see what they brought. This room saw it. Chief Wolf's contact with the supervisory chain became part of the record. His daughter's assumption became part of the record. The note behind the counter at the Millbrook Community Market says, "I should have stopped." That note, framed next to the family photographs, is what justice actually looks like when it works. Not as punishment, but as a 30-second reckoning that someone was finally required to make. That is what this bench exists for. Not for the name on the precinct photograph, for Edward Pike, for Lucia, for Officer Reyes, who filed her report and submitted the footage and waited to see if it would hold. It held. Share this. Subscribe. Justice is still alive. It was always meant for everyone, not just for the people whose fathers have photographs in lobbies.